Today we talk about Sparta, a game of abstract strategy. Yes, the game is definitely an abstract game. The Spartan theme, the ancient theme is totally not there. I apologize in advance if my voice sounds like that of the serial killer in thriller movies. You know, the guy that calls using a voice scrambler. I know what you did last summer. But it is what it is. That's what happened to my voice. This is how I woke up this morning. I still want to share my opinions about the games that I play so much that I just cannot stop myself. I can't help but making video reviews when I have things that I want to share. An important disclaimer, Sparta is a game that is part of my ongoing Kickstarter campaign. It is one of the games that I will send to backers of my campaign for backers of a certain level, of a certain pledge. Several copies of the game have been donated to me by Lion Rampart Imports. They've been very nice that way. And, well, I want you to know that in case you think that that is a piece of information that is relevant to you, that you need to have that to contextualize. If you think that I would make a positive review just for the sake of it, to promote my campaign, it would be very sad if you thought that, frankly, but it is your right to think that, and more importantly, it is your right to know that this is part of my Kickstarter campaign. Truth is, frankly, that I have several copies of the game around the house. I had been curious about the game for a while, so I decided to crack a copy open and give it a go, which is what I did. And now I want to tell about my experience with the game. Each player starts with a series of pieces on the board that are called warriors, and warriors can be upgraded into heroes, which are these other pieces that are thicker than warriors, and they enter the game later. On the board at the beginning of the game you also have these city tiles, which are double-sided. A side is yellow, the other side is red, and written on the board you have instructions on how to set up the board. Players alternate taking turns. When it is your turn, you have to move one of your pieces. You have to, and the piece that you move has to end movement in a different location from the location in which the piece started movement. Each warrior moves up to 2 squares in any direction or any combination of directions. When a piece ends a movement on a city of its own color, if it is a hero, nothing happens. If it is a warrior, then the warrior is upgraded to a hero. If any of your pieces ends movement in an enemy city, then the enemy city is flipped to your own color. It becomes your own city. So, hero could do that, a warrior could do that. If a warrior turns a city into a city of its own color, nothing else happens for that turn, but then next turn, when that piece starts to turn in that location, then that piece can be upgraded to a hero. Difference between heroes and warriors, very simple. Warriors can move up to 3 squares, again in any direction or combination of directions. However, as you go around and you try to capture cities, you also try to eliminate enemy pieces while trying to protect yours. How are pieces eliminated in this game? An enemy piece is eliminated when it is surrounded by 2 pieces of yore in a straight line. In that case, for example, we have that configuration, the red piece is eliminated. The same would happen like this. The same would happen like this. Actually, multiple enemy pieces can be captured. If there's a situation, I move there, now all of the 3 red pieces are surrounded by my pieces, they are all eliminated from the board. It may even be, it's kind of hard to pull off, but it is at least theoretically possible that multiple rows of enemy pieces may be eliminated at the same time. If there's a situation, and I think that it would be very hard to find a red player that would put himself in such a situation, but theoretically if that is what's happening, yellow player could move there, and that row of red units and this row of red units would both be eliminated because they are surrounded by yellow pieces. It may also be that the situation is such that pieces of both players are surrounded by enemy pieces. Suppose that this is the situation. I move my yellow piece here. Now these 2 pieces are surrounded by The red piece is surrounded by mine, red piece is surrounded by mine, but then this yellow piece here is surrounded by 2 red pieces. So as I said, all pieces that are surrounded by enemy pieces are removed. In this case, all of these red pieces and this yellow piece, they're all removed from the game. The game continues this way, alternating moves, eliminating enemy pieces, upgrading units, taking control of enemy cities, losing control of your own cities. It continues like this until one of the 2 players controls all of the cities on the board. In that case, the player is the winner, or until one of the 2 sides only has 1 piece left on the board. In that case, that side is the loser and the opposite side is the winner. Now, what does this game have that makes it different from other games and makes it interesting to me? To me, what is fun about this game is the fact that when you're trying to eliminate an enemy piece, you need to set up a trap pretty much. And to eliminate an enemy piece always takes 2 moves. That means it takes 2 turns. Why is this relevant? It is very relevant because that means that if an enemy piece, suppose I'm trying to capture that piece, is not adjacent to any of my pieces, it is impossible for me to capture that piece next turn. What I need to do is to move one of my pieces adjacent to it, then the opponent takes a move, then I complete my attack. That means, however, that there will be at least a turn in which one of my pieces is adjacent to an enemy piece. And every time that happens, that means that the opponent can turn the tables on you. Because, of course, if you're adjacent to an enemy, then the enemy you're adjacent to may become part of an attack against you. So, between the time in which you start an attack and you complete the attack, you resolve the attack, it usually takes 2 turns. Which creates that moment of uncertainty in which, say, you're hoping for the opponent not to see a certain move, not to see a certain possibility, or simply you force the opponent to make difficult choices. For example, something else is happening that is important on another side of the board, and the opponent decides to move there and sacrifice his piece rather than to attack. But there is a challenge there. You can't just move adjacent to an opponent because you're always in danger when you do so. And when players are even just mildly competent, after a couple of games they start figuring out basic ideas, then it becomes harder, of course, to capture enemy pieces. And what happens is indeed that rarely will it happen that 2 enemy pieces by themselves will capture an enemy piece. What happens is that pretty much nets of your own pieces will move around isolated pieces of the opponent, so then the opponent is put in such a situation that wherever the opponent moves, you will capture the opponent next time. Because, of course, the other way of capturing an opponent is if the opponent moves adjacent to you, and then you capture that opponent. There's the one case in which you don't need to move adjacent, then wait for another turn, if it is the opponent that does that move that puts the opponent adjacent to you. But this is the idea that I like, that the quote-unquote attacker that starts an attack may become the defender, may become the victim if the player hasn't considered things carefully before moving adjacent to an opponent. Also, if you spend a lot of units around an enemy unit to capture that unit, maybe you are taking resources from other parts of the board and the opponent may start taking control of cities, which hardly will matter, frankly. I still haven't seen a game that was really resolved by control of enemy cities, but it is a possibility. It is a possibility and something that you must not neglect. So there's at least that psychological factor. When you see that the opponent has all control of all cities but one, well, then of course you need to do something to protect that one city of yours. So I found that the 2 possible victory conditions, even though elimination of enemy units is by far the most important one, well, the presence of both does add something to the game. The game is very simple to play, the rules are ridiculously simple, but there is some depth here, which pleasantly surprised me. I definitely found that the game played in different ways from game to game, depending on how the players played with their opening moves and how they decided to go. For example, to upgrade units early, or to take control of enemy units, or to try to be aggressive early by eliminating enemy units. There may be periods, yes, in which the action for a couple of turns is a little stagnant, because the players are kind of like moving around each other and studying each other. Pieces move around, but not much happens. But at a certain point, things fall into a pattern, and I mean a special pattern, that will force some of the enemy units to be captured. One side gains some momentum against the other, then the other side starts struggling to try to come back, which sometimes happens and is pretty exciting, sometimes doesn't. There definitely is a nice array of ways in which the game can play out, and within rules that are so simple and definitely very abstract, there is, I believe, enough and even starting from rules that are this simple, I believe that there is enough stuff in here, there is enough meat here to keep a player entertained. Now, what type of player though? Well, it could be a young player, it could be a casual player, with the fact that this game is not more complicated than checkers to play. It is a game that you can teach to somebody easily. It can appeal to players that play heavier games, games with much more theme than this, which pretty much would mean games with any theme, but that, for whatever reason, are looking for a filler. Yes, this game can work as a good filler in a game night, because you can teach it in 2 minutes, it plays in under 30 minutes, it doesn't take almost any time at all to set up. It definitely works as a filler, and it is a nice change of pace if you just finished a game of a fairly meaty game and you're taking a break before you start another one. In conclusion, this is a game that I found pretty enjoyable. It is not the type of game that I usually play, but you also know that from time to time I like to explore designs that are far from my usual playground. So what I have to say about this is that I do not always play abstract games, but when I do, this is one that I would play.